Hello, Kickstarter. I hope you are sitting there contemplating or have already contemplated and feeling satisfied about giving money to this amazing project that we're about to do together, right? You and me. Make an adventure game. And one of the first things I like to do is just talk to people and kind of get my thoughts out and their thoughts and find out what kind of wisdom we can put together about adventure games. One of my people I like to talk to is Ron Gilbert, especially in this case because he was like the Gandalf of adventure games, you might say, old and crabby, and he knows a lot about them. He was my first boss. He was one of the people who hired me at LucasArts and picked me to work on his Secret of Monkey Island game, and he was a mentor to me early on in my career, and so taught me a lot of important things. So I want to see if he can teach me some more. It's been a long time since we made adventure games together or made them at all, and so I want to talk about why that is and what adventure games meant to us then and what they could mean to us now. And so he has very strong opinions, and I'm sure he'll be willing to share them with us. So let's go see Ron Gilbert. Don't use this part. So my question first. Did you play adventure games before you made adventure games?
Yes, I did.
Really?
I did, but mostly the text adventures. I think the one game that really got me excited about adventure games was the original Adventure that was on the mainframe computers. But those were like the very first text adventures, and those are ones that I played and absolutely loved. I didn't really play a lot of graphic adventures, until Maniac Mansion.
It's a habit to call them graphic adventures, but they're only called graphic adventures because they're text adventures that had like.
Right. We don't call them graphic first-person shooters.
No,
right,
unless they're extremely graphic.
Well, I suppose that is another way.
I played a lot of like Scott Adams adventures on my Atari.
This pirate one.
You say.
That's where I stole the idea for Monkey Island.
Did you? You got like 3 origin stories from Monkey Island. He wrote a column for Softside magazine called "Say Yo-Ho," which was like an important command you had to type in because you only type nouns and verbs in that game. You were trapped in the everyday apartment that he starts in, and then you say yo-ho and you're teleported. But the only reason I figured out the puzzle is I read it in a magazine. And back then, that was totally fair game to like have a puzzle that you had to look up or that.
What are magazines?
Exactly. And also Infocom games like Zork and Deadline, was it the murder mystery one? Remember? And Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, I played the Infocom one, Zork. There was also a pirate Infocom one.
There was a pirate Infocom?
Yeah, it was Plundered Hearts.
Sounds like a romantic one.
Well, it's actually an interesting story because Plundered Hearts was designed and written by this woman, Amy Briggs, and she was my babysitter.
What?
Swear to God. She lived across the street from me.
You stole the idea from Monkey Island from your babysitter?
Yeah, that's my 4th origin story from Monkey Island. Yeah, she lived across the street from me, and when I was like in 5th grade or something, she was like 3 or 4 years older. So.
Like she was babysitting you one night when a meteor struck in the backyard.
It was probably in the water.
And the ideas for pirate adventure games came out of. Yeah, and I played those games, and then I went to college. I came back and I applied at Lucas, and I hadn't played any of Lucas's games since the earlier, Ball Blazer and stuff. I hadn't played. So for my interview, I was so poor, I went to the store and I bought Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. I played it all weekend before my interview. And then I had my interview, and then I returned it to the store. And then for my second interview, I got a free copy of Indiana Jones 3. I played that.
The graphic adventure?
I had to go borrow a PC at the computer store I used to work at during the summer and play it in the store while people were shopping for computer parts. I was like playing, seeing how far I could get before my interview with Steve Arnold.
I think with adventure games, I was probably more in love with the design process than the actual games themselves.
Okay, are adventure games more fun to make or play?
I think they're more fun to make than to play. I love crafting the puzzles. I love figuring out all the puzzles that go together and then weaving those around the stories that go into them. That's kind of what I really enjoy about adventure games.
Is that fair?
But it's hard for me to play adventure games though, because I play adventure games and all I do is I just see problems.
Like what are the worst problems?
Even
what are the
really
most egregious common problems adventure games would have?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. There's backwards puzzles.
And that's where you like see the ladder.
You're kind of given the key before you see the locked door. That's one of the things that really bugs me about adventure games. And then the other thing that really bugs me is just completely ridiculous solutions that you only would have discovered through trial and error.
They didn't think of the solution you thought of, but it's a completely logical solution that you came up
Right.
with, where it's just a different order of operations. Like you put the hat on before you open the door, and that doesn't solve the puzzle. It's solved by you opening the door and putting the hat on.
Right.
And those kind of, we're always trying to like capture all the possible solutions, which I think it's only possible by watching people play the game and like play testing it. Like
Yeah.
you'll never be able to think of every single possible solution to a puzzle.
The play testing part is a really important part of adventure games because you do learn so much just from watching people play the games.
I remember watching people playing our first draft of Monkey Island. I learned that more than 3 lines of dialogue in a row was a bad idea because people they're mousing around, they start going like this on their mouse and then clicking. Like
Well, your dialogue.
my dialogue, yeah, exactly. Yeah, not the really good, high quality stuff. And I warn you about this question because how you answer it might get you hate mail.
Okay.
Why did adventure games die?
Well, I don't think they ever died. I think today adventure games are as popular as they were back when Monkey Island came out. The problem is that all these other games have become a lot more popular. When Monkey Island came out, selling 200,000 copies of an adventure game was
Huge.
doing
That was a
really,
big goal. Like
that
breaking
was
100,000
huge.
was our goal.
And I think you'd still sell 100 or 200,000 copies of an adventure game today. The problem is Call of Duty sells 6 and 7 million copies.
at
So
least.
I think they're still very popular. It's just that they haven't kept pace with other games out there.
A lot of things that used to be really unique to adventure games, like story and like ambiance. Like the adventure games more than like an action game would really stress, immersion in the fantasy world and character and stuff like that, and dialogue, especially funny dialogue. Some of those things have been incorporated into like almost all games now. Are games like modern games, like would you call games like L.A. Noire an adventure game?
I wouldn't call those adventure games. A lot of people do call them adventure games. Even a game like Limbo, which I like a lot, I don't know that I would sort of call that.
They kind of like
an
pigeonhole and
adventure
they're
game.
like chopping up games into categories. They'll put that under adventure because you go on an adventure, but it's not.
It's not really an adventure game. I mean, to me, an adventure game isn't about going on an adventure. I mean, sometimes adventure games are really not about going on an adventure, but it's about that puzzle solving. It's about kind of intellectually working your way through the game.
Don't you do that in Limbo? You kind of work through a puzzle.
Yeah, but I don't know, it's different. I mean, I don't know why I don't consider Limbo an adventure game, but I just don't.
I think it's a gray area. Well, that's like a Limbo joke because it's so black and white. Because you are solving puzzles, it's structured so different than a normal adventure game, which has a lot of purposeful backtracking and navigation, exploration, like non-linear exploration.
Right. But I wonder, is that one of the reasons adventure games have lost popularity? Do people?
You said they didn't lose.
Well,
Which is
that they're not gaining popularity in pace with everything else. Is it that modern gamers don't have the patience for adventure games? Because to me, one of the great things about adventure games is when I'm playing a really good adventure game, it's really about this quiet contemplation. It's about me sitting at the computer, having fun thinking about this game. And I think a lot of adventure game puzzle solving happens when you're not at the computer. You're trying to figure out what this puzzle is, and then you're riding the bus to work, or you're riding in your car, and then these things kind of pop in your head. It's like, aha, and then you can't wait to get home and be able to try that solution out. And that's kind of a different mentality for playing games than I think a lot of people have. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons that they're not as popular, because people just don't enjoy that as much.
In most development environments, or when you're talking to a publisher about it, it's not considered okay to be stuck like that anymore.
Right.
And that was the act of playing adventure games. Often you were stuck, and sometimes you just walk around, and it could be really frustrating. But you'd often have that thing you're talking about where you changed your state of mind by going and taking a shower, going to sleep, or going for a walk.
Right. But I think that's an important point, though. I think it's one of the things that makes adventure games, a good adventure game good, is that there isn't just one puzzle to solve at any given time. If you're playing Limbo and you're stuck, you're stuck. But playing Monkey Island, there were hopefully 2 or 3 puzzles that you could be working on at any one moment. So if you were stuck trying to figure out how to get past the poodles, there was something else that you could be working on to kind of get your mind out of that that specific puzzle.
Or even or in a game like Zelda, where you can get stuck playing Zelda, but you can also go do other things like hunt for ghosts and put them in jars or trade masks. There's something that keeps you from putting the game down. Because once you put a game down, especially nowadays, there's so many games to play. Like when we were making adventure games, you'd often have just one game at a time for months on end, And now there's so many games coming out all the time that if I put down a game, it's really unlikely I'll pick it back up again.
You're not going to go back to
and
it.
I always say I'm going to go back to it, but I never go back to it. When we were making Psychonauts, it had a lot of things from adventure games in it, and a lot of things from platformers in it. And we were just testing out the Black Velvet level in Psychonauts, and there's this inventory puzzle. We had an inventory in it to make it like an adventure game, and you got these paintings, and they're magic paintings, and you hang them up on hooks, and they would come to life and become whatever the painting was. So like a picture of a guitar would become a giant guitar that you climb up on, like a ladder, and these vines would grow and become like a trellis you could climb on. And we first tested that up with the publisher. There were feedback came back. It's like people like the level, but I don't think the paintings are working. And we're like, oh, what happened? And they're like, did people just never figure that out? And they were like, oh no, they figured it out eventually, but there was a period where they were confused and they didn't know what to do, and then they figured it out. I was like, isn't that kind of what we used to call gameplay? Being confused, not knowing what to do, and then going, aha, and figuring it out and moving forward. It definitely seems like a gameplay fault now, if the players are like, I don't know what to do. But I think it's a really fine line between entertaining confusion and non-entertaining confusion. But there's this way of when you're telling a riddle to somebody and they're almost getting it, you're almost winking at them, like, oh, you almost got it, you're really close, think about you're giving them these hints, and it's this kind of entertainment where you feel like you're really close to figuring out something. But when you have that feeling of you have no idea even where to go or what to do, I think that's not entertaining at all. So
and we did a lot of that stuff in Monkey Island, because you would go back and talk to people, and there were people would give you successively more hints on things, and I think that's just part of good design. And I think when somebody does solve the puzzle that they had a lot of trouble on, they should feel like that it was a fair puzzle, that it wasn't wasn't an unfair puzzle.
I should have got that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the feeling they should have had, is, I should have figured that out myself. But giving hints is something that I think, like a modern adventure game, giving hints is something that they could probably do well without it being a hint system. Something that just popped up stuff on the screen, but gave maybe a little more hints through the progression of the game.
Because I remember when I was playing the Indiana Jones games, I really enjoyed the first half of them, and I got stuck. The first time I really, really got stuck, I didn't know what to do, and I looked in that hint book where you had to put the red plastic on top to see the hint. And then as soon as I did that, I solved that puzzle. And the next time I got stuck, the second I got stuck, I could use the hint book again. So and then I was enjoying the game less, because I was just, as soon as I got stuck, I would go and look up the hint. And then it was more like the puzzles just became these tedious blocks instead of.
But isn't that really the problem we face today with the internet? Because
when we invented the internet, we fixed it.
The internet is this always available hint book, and I find I do that myself when I play games. If I get stuck for longer than a few minutes, I go over to the internet and look stuff up. Does that take some of the enjoyment out of the game, like you said with the hint book?
I don't know. Maybe that's something that actually would help adventures nowadays, is that you don't have that fear of that I might not be able to finish this game. I bought this game, and there's a chance I might not be able to finish it. This guy thinks scary for some people, but knowing that they can always get through it if they need to, maybe that will help. So about how modern games have taken a lot of stuff that used to be exclusive to adventure games. Is there anything they haven't? Is there anything left behind that adventure games used to be really good at that modern games haven't?
Good dialogue.
It's good dialogue. That's always a tricky question.
I really, it's hard for me to mention a game that I've played that I just thought the dialogue was just really spot on and good and funny, and
it is really rare, and it is a little awkward because
modern game.
It's discussed. It's discussed often how a game has great dialogue, or how dialogue has gotten really better. And to me, when I look at even the modern games that are supposed to have really great dialogue, they just don't. To me,
yeah, it's the same thing. I think there's a real trick to writing interactive dialogue. I think it's something that so a lot of screenwriters come from writing movies to writing games, but they don't really understand what it's like to write interactive dialogue. It's like, to me, interactive dialogue is not writing cutscenes, right? And that's just writing a scene of a movie. But to me, true, really good interactive dialogue are like the dialogues in Monkey Island, that you're actually interacting with these characters and these dialogue. We call them dialogue puzzles, but not really dialogue. They're not really puzzles per se, but that you are interacting with these people and you feel like you're having a conversation with them and you're getting funny responses from them and with the dialogue in Monkey Island. One of the things that's really important to me about that is that when the character would say something and then it was time for Guybrush to respond, that we would put up 4 lines and we got this opportunity to quickly tell 4 jokes. Because people would read those 4 lines and they could laugh at all 4 of the lines.
And they know that even sometimes the choice was meaningless.
Yeah.
But they would. Yeah. It was an opportunity for humor, and then you move on.
Yeah, it's an easy opportunity for humor.
But I think one of the reasons that it doesn't work, or is considered to not work in games these days, is that most games aren't funny. Like most games aren't using that as a device to deliver a bunch of humor at once. But they're, and it's true in a more serious setting, having a whole bunch of dialogue choices and repeating dialogue would not be as fun. But I think it works for comedy games.
Well, I used that exact same Monkey Island system for Deathspank, and I think that worked. I think that worked really well.
I don't know if it's fair, but I have a little bit of a snobbery about. I feel like dialogue. People who write dialogue for games should be programmers, or should have programmed it at one point in their life. Because I think the act of wiring up dialogue and programming it, making it function in a game, and then playing it, and then seeing what's working and not working, and having the choice of either changing the dialogue or changing the code, and wrestling that with just within your own mind, I think is really important. Because then you start to learn to write better dialogue, and you learn to write better code, to make it work. Because sometimes you never know which is going to make the dialogue better.
Yeah, I think true interactive dialogue is part programming. It really is.
Because the logic of the conversation is procedurally generated. Okay, on to question 2. What is your favorite adventure game puzzle?
In any game or one that I did?
I didn't ask this question. Oh, I did.
You did. You just asked it.
You wrote it.
We have it on tape. I think my favorite adventure game puzzle in Monkey Island anyway is the one with the Grog, where you had to get the Grog to dissolve the cell door that Otis is in, and you had to transfer it between the melting Grog cups. I like that puzzle because a lot of times when you're putting something in your inventory, you kind of forget it at that point. You would put the Grog in these mugs, and then as you played the game in the inventory, the Grog cups were melting, and you had to then transfer it to another cup in order to get it. And that's why I like that puzzle.
It's kind of a unique puzzle. Like I haven't seen that used too many times.
Yeah, I figured that every adventure game would have a Grog transferring mug puzzle after that.
If there's anything you like that people have done since you guys kind of stopped making adventure games?
There really isn't, though. There really isn't.
That's going to be hard for Ron, because Ron hates all modern games. I did think that adventure games had an accessibility problem. Like in Final Fantasy VII, I remember you just push against the door and it opened, you walk through it. And it was like, that was so easy and fast. In adventure game, you have to walk out and click on open door and go through. But maybe that just gave you the time to think, to solve puzzles.
But some of that stuff gets streamlined away from modern adventure games. Doing a point-and-click adventure game today, I would not require players to go down and select open and go down and select the door. Some of that can be streamed away without detracting from, I think, the core of what makes the adventure game fun. I think with a game like Limbo, even though I don't know if I consider Limbo an adventure game per se, but one of the things that Limbo did really well is they did keep you focused.
And you can tell they did a lot of playtesting and tuning, because right at the point where you're about to give up on every puzzle, I'd always figure out the solution. You know what I mean? Which is because it's risky, because there's only one puzzle to solve. But
it's also a little easier because there's only one puzzle to solve, right? You can tune everything to that one puzzle at that one moment in the game. So is a lot of the interest that people have today in adventure games, is that more? Do you think that's more nostalgia based? Because there are a lot of people who love adventure games. But do they love the nostalgia of them as opposed to the actual adventure games?
Well, some people don't like some of the complexities that have been added to games. I think they don't necessarily want to think about navigating a 3D camera with their right thumb. You know, like they may not want to worry about survival, and the last one I played was Mechanarium, and I guess the things I really liked about it was just the beauty of the art, like just the painting, which you don't often see in they're beautiful 3D games, but the way that it was like a handcrafted, background painting by, and I don't know if that's something that you have to be an adventure game to have, but.
And I would consider that an adventure game.
Yeah.
Just talking about, what games are adventure games or whatnot. I do think that that's an adventure game.
little thought balloons with little flashbacks instead of cutscenes. They were like him just thinking about robots beating him up. It was really, really funny.
Well, I know one thing I would never do in an adventure game if I was going to make a new one, pixel hunting with the cursor. That was a really bad thing that we did.
Was that done on purpose?
No, I don't think it was done on purpose. It was just something you did. We didn't really think about it necessarily as a good thing or a bad thing. But just waving the cursor over the screen from top to bottom to see that 4x4 pixel area that lit up.
I did a pixel hunting puzzle on accident in Full Throttle, which is, I thought it was Ben's trying to break in the back of his factory, but he knows there's a special spot on the wall to kick to open the door. But it wasn't supposed to be that you kicked every spot on the floor. It was that you remember that the person who told you that where to go was younger when she broke in, and so you're at a lower point in the wall, and you kick, and when most people play it, what they do is kick every single brick on the back wall. It's my fault.
So what's your favorite part of making an adventure game?
I love brainstorming puzzles, sitting in a room and just kind of thinking through both the character and the story and the puzzles at the same time. So you kind of think about, your character has a goal, something they want. So you're both thinking of obstacles and a way to circumvent the obstacles at the same time. And the conversations are always pretty loose because you can't, it seems like mentally if you go like, okay, you're really trying, like, we need a way to break through a door not using a key. How do you do it? Like, you get so focused that you just can't think of anything. It's almost like the similar process to playing an adventure game where you have to distract your mind. Sometimes you get so locked in trying to find the solution you can't find it, and you need to think about something else, and then out of your peripheral vision comes the solution to the puzzle that you're trying to design. And so I like designing those. I like working with artists and animators, and I liked back in the old days using a system like Scum, which was our scripting language for making the games, because I could do the work, meaningful programming work myself, which I can't do anymore. But I could go and make a room happen. I could wire the doors up and the windows and everything, and because then you could really craft something and change it and polish it all by yourself, and you could stay there all night long trying to make it so that exactly when you step on this one creaky spot in the floor that the pigeon turns around, and that's the dumbest example I could think of, creaky pigeons, but you know what I'm saying.
I think that goes back to the argument that we still have today about whether designers should be programmers. And I think they absolutely should, because part of doing really good design is being able to iterate on things and quickly try things out to make sure that things feel right.
But if you have the right tools, you don't have to be a programmer. If you have the ability to change things.
You don't have to be like a C++ programmer, but there is kind of this ability to wire things up in whatever, whether you're doing in Lua or Scum or some visual tool. Just that ability to go in and manipulate things and try things out very quickly, as opposed to just writing it down on paper and then having other people implement it, I think is really important.
How are we going to make this game? Not that much money. We don't have Scum.
Is that an actual question?
Can we steal Scum? We used to have this whole system to make games really fast, so we either have to make it again from scratch for no money, no time, or we could use an existing graphic adventure engine that's out there.
I think we should do that. I think we should use an existing graphics adventure engine to do it. For that exact reason, is that we can't spend a lot of time developing the technology, and there are some really good graphic adventure engines out there. So I think we should do a little bit of research, find a really good one, and then just embrace that and use that engine to build the game.
It'd be really neat if it came with a scripting language that I could actually use again. I think for the budget that we're talking about, I'm going to have to do programming.
You're doing all the programming.
This could be exciting. For some reason, it seems like it's easier to do playtesting. I don't know. We did playtesting back then, but we were much more isolated.
On the original Maniac Mansion, we had two testers. One was a guy that worked in the office, and the other person that tested the game was my uncle. And I would physically mail him floppy disks every week of the build of the game. At least now, if you need some kind of testing, we can deliver things digitally over the internet to people. We're getting to the point where I think we can really service niche markets now. Things don't have to be just completely mass market, but you can say, you know what, there's this small group of people, but that small group of people is still 500,000. And we can service those niche markets. I think traditional adventure games will probably always be serving a niche market, but hopefully it's a big enough niche market that it's still interesting.
And that's the thing. The internet has enabled a lot of spread out people with unusual interests to get together and kind of make a community online, and that makes it easier to make something for them that will reach a lot of people. But maybe that niche market is also regular people. That's the thing, is that we used to, I remember, have this feeling of we're trying to make games for regular people. Adventure games would touch on themes like romantic themes, comedy, things that are not often touched on by games. Like games are still mostly stuck in summer blockbuster action movie kind of mode. And adventure games would talk about themes that were broader and about the human experience in a way, a little bit.
But I think one of the reasons they can do that is because they are a little more slow moving. And that could be an advantage for a lot of people, because sitting somebody down that does not have a lot of exposure to games in front of an Xbox and having all these things coming at them and having to make quick reaction decisions, that really does narrow your audience down quite a bit. But adventure games are very slow moving. You can take as much time as you need to solve things. There aren't timers ticking all the time. And that could broaden them into that more kind of mass normal. I don't want to say normal, that sounds bad.
I'll say normal.
Normal people type playing those things. When I was doing the adventure games at Humongous Entertainment, which were true adventure games but for kids, we found that a lot of parents played those games. When their kids weren't even there, when their kids were off in bed, they continued to play Putt-Putt and Freddy Fish because it was a game, it was a thing that they really enjoyed, and it was something that they could do without, feeling like there was this kind of action that they had to do, but it was slow, and they really enjoyed those a lot.
Sounds dirty when you say it that way. Kids, we were just playing putt-putt. Those noises you heard when we were asleep. Mom and Dad were just playing putt-putt.
So what about game length? Because Monkey Island, at the time, 40 hours was what we shot for.
We always just said that. We always said 40 hours of gameplay because it felt like 40 hours of gameplay.
But we would put puzzles into those games just to stretch the time out, because gamers expected 40 hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
And I mean, other than some very hardcore RPGs these days, nobody expects 40 hours of gameplay.
I calculated when we started Grim Fandango, because Full Throttle, the game before, had been criticized for being too short, because we went really big with the production and we had to cut like a third of it out. So it was really short, and so I sat there and I counted the number of puzzles, and there are 20 puzzles in the game. Real puzzles, and I was like, okay, we need at least twice that. So like I was like, okay, 40 puzzles, and each one has to provide like 15 minutes of entertainment. 40 puzzles. 40 puzzles. That's fine. We can do that.
I think shorter is better. I really do think a shorter experience that's more focused is actually going to be a lot better than drawing something out. I mean, I wish people would look at games a little bit more like they look at other entertainment. Because if you go to a movie, it lasts 2 hours, and you're going to spend close to $20 to go to that movie. You're going to spend $12 or $14 for the ticket, plus the overpriced popcorn. And yet, when people buy a game and it lasts for 4 hours, like say Limbo, but they only spent $14 on it. I mean, that's twice as much as they're getting out of a movie. I wish that was embraced more, because I think we could do a lot more interesting, focused experiences if we really could push the time down to something where we weren't just filling and drawing stuff out.
All right, so how are we going to draw this out?
So 30 minutes is what I think this game should be. 30 minutes.
Amazing minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
30 of the best minutes. I'm trying to remember the scope of the old. Do you remember the budget of Monkey Island?
Yes, I do.
How much was that?
$130,000.
Oh, Jesus. $130,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's probably more than we're asking for here.
Yeah, because we all made crap.
How many
back
rooms
then.
did Monkey Island have? Like, we called everything a room. Like the one art file that represented
Right,
an navigable space.
And that was a holdover from Maniac Mansion.
Yeah, because they were actually rooms.
Because Scum called them rooms.
Weren't they always like, it seemed like they were always 100, because 100 was like a hard limit in the engine
100
for a while.
is what we, 99.
So, let's calculate, like, can we make 100 rooms? Okay, I'm going to do this again.
I think it's like 20 rooms. I think we should shoot for 20 rooms.
20, are you still going to have rooms?
Well, screens, whatever.
Yeah, 2D or 3D.
Whatever the kids are calling them these days.
I mean, one of the reasons I was excited about making an adventure game is working with Nathan Stapley, who's an artist who has a great painting style. And then one of the things I missed about the 2D graphic adventures is that you would be able to have a great artist expressing themselves directly onto the screen, not going through 3D shaders or any of the complicated technology that would change or alter their, the vision for what it should look like. So I do like the idea of actually hand-painted backgrounds, and then it's just a question of should the characters also be hand-painted and animated, or
I think it should be all 2D.
all 2D.
Old school.
So look this up. Old school.
I just think it's a lot more interesting than 3D. 3D does buy you a lot, but I think for a project like this, just doing something that really emphasizes the art from the artist, I think 2D really would really get us that.
When's our last chance to make a shooter? We could change right now. We could reshoot some important things in that pitch video.
With really funny dialogue.
Yeah.
What about music?
What?
What about music?
What would you do for music? Steal music? Hum it? I can hum it.
Just free off the internet. We could crowdsource the music.
That's scary. Wait, can we trick the backers into making the entire game for us?
Yeah, you submit art, submit some code.
This could be like the magic soup stone.
Right.
Where you're like, I got the soup, I got the stone that will make soup for you. All you need to add is boiling water and maybe a carrot and maybe a little bit of potatoes and some meat.
And we're
and
done.
then take the stone out.
And we're done.
And we're the stone. We're like the stone we're just, it's totally a fraud. That's brilliant.
Probably don't want to use the word fraud in this pitch.
Yeah,
just
when I say fraud, I meant opportunity.
Yes, exactly.
That's not what it appears to be. The interesting thing about this project is that we really don't know a lot of things at the very beginning, like how things are going to go, like how we're going to handle input and let people actually contribute to the game.
But I think we should take a lot of contributions from people and give people a lot of opportunity to give feedback on things.
Right.
Because that is part of the process. There is that kind of sausage factory part of making games. I think of a new metaphor. Chocolate factory just sounds too delicious. I don't think that's a good metaphor.
Chocolate is not hard to watch, but you don't want to know about all the things that fall into it on accident.
Yeah.
Wait, what's this question? Who's the most famous person you know that plays point-and-click graphic adventures?
I don't know. I was just thinking up questions because somebody had to be prepared.
I do know one.
Okay.
Elijah Wood.
Really?
In Entertainment Weekly, he said, "What was your favorite video game?" And he said, "Monkey Island."
Really?
Well, I was told. Someone told me that.
I know Steven Spielberg played adventure games a lot. So who's more famous, Steven Spielberg or Elijah Wood?
Wow. That's heavy. We don't want to talk about potential rewards here, do we? Or do we? Like things that we can give away for certain donations. There's obviously like the game at the end, or be a character in the game. Mm-hmm. That might be crazy. We could have people drop by.
They show up at the door and they have to show their little card that proves their contribution level.
But we set tape down depending on how much they back the project. Mm-hmm. So some people can only go 40 feet into the office, and some people go all the way to the kitchen where the free soda is. But it costs like $8,000 to get back there.
And some people will make them dinner.
Wait, you make them dinner?
Yeah, I'll just.
What's
I'll
your best dish that you
I'll
make?
Make them dinner. Osobuku. I make a really good osobuku.
Osobuku. What is osobuku? Is that a game?
Braised, like lamb shank.
All right, braised lamb shank, $5,000. Ron Gilbert will make you osobuku. I mean, it'd be interesting to see because people are always saying they want these kind of games, and this is kind of a referendum on that. Like it's like
help save adventure games.
Oh, that sounds like so victim-y, Ron.
Okay, put up or shut up. Take your pick. So your two choices.
Those are your two modes, victim or really hostile. I hope this works out because it is kind of a game that we haven't really been able to make happen for business reasons for like many, many years because of current market. What was the phrase I always use?
Market conditions?
Current market realities when they cancel adventure games.
Or we'll just prove all those publishers right.
Or we'll just prove them all right.